You're listening to Crush Performance, your weekly source for sport performance and athletic development information. Get the Crush blogs, podcasts, and performance links at crushperformance.com. Now, here he is, the Crusher.
Welcome to Crush Performance, everybody. I am Jeff Kershell, and if you're new to the show, my background is in exercise science and strength and conditioning. I started out working with the Toronto Blue Jays, with national and Olympic athletes, with Baseball Canada and Major League Baseball. I've worked in professional football and hockey, soccer, swimming, the racket sports, you name it, I've done it. My job is literally to see how good an athlete can become. And early in my career, I learned that just focusing on the physical side of athlete development and sport performance, you know, the strength, speed, power, and agility, well, it only takes you so far. You have to address all of the areas of development and performance and then put it all together in a master plan. And that's exactly what Crush Performance is all about. Investigating and understanding what it truly takes to be great in sport. It's a journey. And today, I'd like you to join me on an incredible journey. But I don't want you just to come along for the ride this time. I want you to put yourself in the leading role. Imagine a journey that will take you from the creature comforts of home as a young teenager into the turbulent and uncertain world of junior and professional hockey. And then, after dealing with numerous injuries and concussions, a transition out of sport into the world of the tech industry and into building one of the great tech companies of our time. And then after years of building this company to greatness, yet another transition from a major corporate buyout that allows you to get back into the world of competitive sport that you love so much. This time, however, your teammates won't be 20 or so other hockey players. No. This time, your team will be made up of 16 of the most loyal and dedicated teammates you could ever imagine. Teammates that will take you thousands of miles across the Arctic in one of the most brutal, difficult, and challenging races on Earth. Not just once, not just twice, but 5 times. But on that 4th race, these teammates will save your life after a terrible fall, helping you survive just long enough through a brutal blizzard and minus 50, minus 60 degree temperatures. Just long enough until some pretty special people could safely arrive with an Apache helicopter to get you back to safety. A safety that would turn out to be a new kind of nightmare. A nightmare that comes with a major brain injury or concussion. It's a nightmare that doesn't end when you wake up in the morning. No, this nightmare just keeps going and going. It comes from within, and it's totally debilitating. With no one to turn to and nowhere to go, you look to the internet to search out answers, and it's there that you discover some incredible people and a new adventure begins. An adventure of recovery, learning, and collaboration, of bringing together all of your past experiences and knowledge to help start an incredible program that has the potential to not only change the sporting landscape, but may very well even change the human landscape. It's a program that you wish you had as that young, gangly teenager leaving home to chase down the dream of becoming a professional hockey player. I've been looking forward to this episode of Crush Performance ever since I met Jason Campeau, the CEO of Elite Athlete Services a few years back. His journey from sport into the world of tech and how he's taken everything he's learned in both of those worlds, now connecting the dots and bringing it all together in a collaborative program that I personally believe has the power to change how we work with, support, and develop athletes. It's a truly inspirational story. And through today's episode, I want you to put yourself in the leading role. You are going to be playing Jason. My daughter said to me, "Hey Dad, it's pretty tough for me to play a man." I said to her, don't think of it that way. Today, you're just a young teenager, a hockey player trying to make your way. Then a business person building an empire, a tech empire. And then back into the world as an athlete, a competitor, a team leader. And then maybe one of the most important roles you'll play today, I told her, the role of a world-class problem solver. Her response was a nod, and "I'm in," she said. Listen, I am so glad you're joining me here today, and I'm very proud to share Jason's incredible story on this week's episode of Crush Performance. Today's episode is titled, From the Rink to the Boardroom. It's okay not to be okay. and we're joined by my good friend Jason Campeau, the CEO of Elite Athlete Services. Jason, welcome to Crush Performance. I believe it's your first time on the show. This is a big one for me.
No, it is, Jeff, and thanks for having me, and really looking forward to this conversation. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, listen, this is a big catch, like a big Crush catch here, because boy, your story is incredible. And of course, we were brought together by one of my good friends and colleagues, Martin Mrazek. And I thought today would be a great way, Jason, sort of as we dive into this whole concept of perception this year on Crush Performance. We've gone through the brain game. We've looked at talent ID. We've looked at all these different areas. And each year we have a major theme on the show. This year it is perception. And Dr. Martin Mrazek's a big part of our cracking that code. And of course, that's how you and I got together, knowing Marty Mrazek. Let's talk about Elite Athlete Services. You are the CEO of this incredible company. Groundbreaking stuff, to tell you the truth. But maybe for our listeners to start it off, let's tell them what that's all about, Jason.
Yeah, I think the idea and the concept was came from the fruition of helping athletes really understand what's going on and explaining to them what they potentially are dealing with. So we started this company, and the idea behind it was really to give athletes, coaches, organizations as a whole, the ability to identify and work on and progress through any type of potential issues, along with helping on the sports performance side. Obviously, the sports performance side extremely well with your background, Jeff. And I think with what we've tried to do is differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. And really, there's nothing that's truly comparable to what we've done and what we're doing. And the idea of, from a business perspective, with my background, having been a COO of an IT company, was really to try to integrate technology on the medical side to really help athletes. And the way we've done that is, created a bespoke app that really is tailored to, helping athletes. They go through an assessment. They basically identify potentially any strengths, weaknesses, where they need to work. Then they're directed to a learning portal where all topics are discussed thoroughly. And you've got pro players, you got all kinds of testimonials going on, and it really gives athletes an outlet, and that outlet is without even speaking to anybody individually. And what I like about that is, every player, every athlete, every human really deals with matters differently. Not one person is the same. So when it comes to mental health and sports performance, every guy, and you hear the superstitions you hear of all the pregame routines, everything that they do to get prepared. Everyone's different, and we know that. And that's why some athletes, if you ask them to go see a clinical psychologist, that's just not going to happen. But where we stand is, your information, everything is completely discreet, and you fill out your information, and then you can actually get the answers of what you're dealing with, along with the idea of, the best clinicians, the best sports psychologists that are geared towards what these people are dealing with. So you're not just going to a general doctor, you're going to someone that, in Marty's case, if you were to see Marty, he works with the Edmonton Oilers, and I would believe that he's probably one of the best in Canada. And that's the type of team we have around the country and eventually globally. So the overall package, Jeff, to me was a no-brainer. Cody and Marty, Cody, who's our COO, Cody Cuthill, and Marty approached me. I was actually living in Cayman Islands at the time, and they had asked me to help out, and this was near and dear to my heart, and I jumped all over it, and the rest is history. We're moving forward. And from a tech standpoint, you hear the words AI and data all the time, and two of the things that we decided was, how do we tie these into this, into what we're doing. And I think, not solely relying on AI, but we do have AI involved with our app and everything we're doing. it is the future. So we have to be mindful of that. So yeah, I'm super excited about what's going on right now.
No, I agree. No, and that's a great sort of overview of the Elite Athlete Services. Anybody who wants to check it out, it's eliteathleteservices.com. Great information there, and you can check out the history of the club and everybody involved. There is a roster of pros, and I agree. Dr. Marty Mrazek, one of the best in Canada, but world renowned for his work as well, and one of the masterminds behind this whole project. But first and foremost, to pull a guy away from the Cayman Islands, this has got to be serious business, man.
Yeah, no, it was definitely something, I had dealt with, we can dive into that, but I mean, I dealt with a lot of these things through playing sport and through different activities I've done. So obviously, I understand it from all aspects. I had the luxury of being in the business world, I had the luxury of playing pro hockey, as well as, competing in some serious races.
Yeah, some serious races is right. Well, why don't we get down to it? Listen, one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on, Jason, is sort of we started at the end of your story. This is where you guys are at right now, but the road for you winding up here talking to us today about this incredible program, that's a story in itself. Just a little background for me on this whole thing. A few years back, Dr. Mrazek came to me and said they were trying to bring this guy, this scientist, this sports psychologist from Sweden and from Europe, a guy named Dr. Urban Johnson. And they were going to kind of set up sort of an exchange thing. And one of the prerequisites for having him come over was a little bit of media attention to talk about all this great work they're doing over in Europe. And so I'm going, yes, by all means. That actually had Dr. Johnson and Dr. Mrazek in studio with us. And at that time, Dr. Johnson was talking about the research he was doing on this thing called Hassel scores, looking at doing these evaluations of athletes and how, giving them a tools to help them organize and set up their approach for life could really help them in sport. Not only did they find that it increased performance, it also decreased the injuries in their research, which was really fascinating. That's what got me down this road. For you, you started in pro hockey. Let's go back to the beginning here, Jason, and talk about that time for you and some of the things that you dealt with there, or the things young hockey players are dealing with, young athletes anywhere, where Elite Athlete Services is just a perfect fit right now.
Yeah, no, I think when I said that from my life experiences, it started from a young age, and I can relate to all these athletes, especially from the hockey world that are going through it right now. I was drafted as an underage 15-year-old and went to play in the Quebec League. Left home at a young age, and I learned a lot and had to grow up real fast that year. And it was something that, if I look back at that today and what we're doing, is I wish the tools that we're offering were available then, right? You're playing with 19, 20-year-olds, you got rookie parties, you got all of it going on. And it's a lot to deal with. And for these young kids, it's like they're truly kids, right? I was 15, drafted. I think I was 6'1", 145, and I had braces. So, and in my first shift, I lined up against Sandy McCarthy playing. He was with the Laval Titans, 6'4", 235 beast, and he asked me to fight. I'll say it wasn't much of a fight, but yeah, that was the type of world I was in back then. And things have changed and evolved, and for the better, but still today, there's lots of room for improvement. But from that, I ended up going to, because my parents had moved from Quebec, Montreal to Whitby, Ontario. So I was able to switch over, and I moved to Oshawa Generals in the OHL the year after, which made it a lot easier just from a schooling standpoint. I was English. I could speak French, obviously, very well, but I went to an English high school. So that helped from the scholastic standpoint. And that was back when Lindros and Arnott and all those guys were there. And then we went, I got traded to North Bay. And that was kind of the turning point for me. The best kind of thing that ever happened in hockey was we ended up, I have friends for life that are still my best friends today from that team. And we went to the Memorial Cup. We won the OHL championship, went game 7 against Detroit. my claim to fame was scoring the overtime goal in that game 7. So that was kind of cool. The guys always still chirp me about it. But yeah, it was something that, through sport, you learn so much. And, it was from there, went to Leafs camp, was there for a bit, got hurt. And, story of my career was, obviously a lot of injuries. But over time, we decided that, hey, I need to make sure that we got a backup here, and went to, and wanted to have that full education. So went to UNB, University of New Brunswick, and we actually won the first national championship there, the first ever for that university. And now, it's probably the winningest university in Canadian hockey history now. So it was kind of cool to be at the start of that, and got to play after that, got to play over in London, England for a year, which was really cool. And our team was owned by the LA Kings, but it was just a different brand of hockey, a different style. But I'll just, one quick story on that is my first shift in the London arena, we were playing, and this clip made Coach's Corner, Don Cherry's Coach's Corner, because I was waiting for the ref to drop the puck. He wouldn't drop it, and he said, "Look up," and there was a full-out brawl in the stands. I guess they had given out tickets to fill the rink to make sure it was full for the first game, and a bunch of hooligans got a hold of it. So there's, Don Cherry called it Fight Night in London. So that was a cool experience, but it was great to travel and be able to play. And then kind of decided from there that hockey had taught me a lot, but it was time to make my move. I always had a passion for the business world, always knew that it was something I wanted to do. And we started our own IT company, and basically was there for 18 years before we sold it. And kind of from there, that was something that, when I look back at how we had success, was really from the sporting world, really taught me, from the rink to the boardroom, the dressing room. You learn so much as a kid growing up, and you learn all about what it is to be a part of a team, and being able to be a part of 2 winning teams and 2 championship teams, taught me a lot. And, I say in business, and it's the same for EAS as it was when I was at my other company, that, you're only as good as your people, right? And that's a true fact. And the ability to have great people and be surrounded by great people, the sky's the limit on what you can accomplish. And I think that was one thing that, that drive, that competitive, that thing that you're taught when you're young, and you're able to take it after sport, whether you play 20 years or 10 years in the NHL or in the NFL or whatever it is. Life goes on after that. And even if it doesn't work out, you can take what you've learned from sport and apply it later in life. And that's, truly what I'm most proud of, is taking my background and putting it to good use. And now this EAS opportunity is like, it's everything that my life's thrown at me or provided me or given me, and putting it all together into this company. What a good fit. And I love my 2 partners, Cody and Marty, and it's just a great opportunity.
Yeah, we're talking with Jason Campeau, the CEO of Elite Athlete Services. You can check out all of their great stuff at eliteathleteservices.com. A lot to unpack there, Jason. Listen, man. So first, I want to go back to this idea. Let's just go through this timeline again, because I really want people to really connect here, because there are a lot of important takeaways. And by the way, inside of that dialogue, I officially have the title for this episode of Crush Performance. I'm going to call it From the Rink to the Boardroom. I wasn't sure what to call this episode, but that will be the title of this episode, Jason. I really do love that. And I think, knowing you a little bit the way I do, I appreciate that so much. So that will be the title of this episode. But one of the first things you said there, and I think it's important here, not just for the players themselves, but for the families as well. And then the industry of hockey. I want to talk to you about this, leaving home at a young age. And kids, you were just a kid, facing off with braces, in your first game against some big, giant monster man, full grown man hockey player. Man, come on. there's
Yeah.
there's nothing to get you ready for that. What kind of support did you have then, Jason? And what knowing knowing what's available and what you guys are doing now, how different is it for me, hopefully, for the players today?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jeff, and it's got there's a lot of bite behind the answer. Is that I believe, you know, for myself personally, there was nothing, no support, right, except for family. Because I was, the English kid in a French dressing room and 15 years old. So it was just that was a tough situation to navigate. But I think overall, when I look at it, is that applying it to what we have is it gives you an outlet, right? It gives you a way to gather information and intelligence on what you're dealing with. Like, why am I so anxious before this game? Why can't I sleep? Why can't I do this? Well, there's lots of there's various factors that go into that. And I think the part you mentioned about families is that, it is important for the families to understand, what their kids going through and be supportive. And you see so many parents just push push push, and to a certain point I agree with it and I think it's great, but it's also understanding what's happening with your child besides his athletic ability, right? What's really going on, because without that mental side, it's tough to navigate a junior career, a college career, to get to where you're hoping to go. So and then add in injuries, add in, there's all kinds of varying factors that make it hard. Let's face it, if you're Connor McDavid, you're getting to the show, right? But there's not every player is a Connor McDavid. And life after that transition of hockey is, what is that kid going to do after junior if he doesn't make it? What's that do to the kid? So I think all in all, I look at, there's programs that, we're looking at putting in place. And again, is I look at the juniors and I look at the amateur level below junior, your midgets, peewee, and we've been dealing with a team, and already, you notice, surprisingly, out of, call it 20 participants, potentially 4 participants that are struggling with things, and a couple that are really bad. And just that alone, Jeff, for me, is it makes it all worth it, right? Because man, I wish I had that. Man, I wish I had that guy to talk to when there was peer pressure here or this or that or whatever it was. Is being able to have that outlet, right? I think it's important. And I think also it's important, when you're coming in, that your veterans understand that they went through this, right? And almost, identifying a player or two, your leaders, your captains, to really look out for the young guys and really mentor and help them versus, treat them as rookies. So it's kind of changing the mindset. I think would help a lot in that world. But I think it's come a long way. Obviously, education has come a long way, and I think there's so many options now of playing in the CHL or going to the U.S. college route. But at the end of the day, is I think parents, kids need to be aware of what they're getting into, and people need to talk to each other and support each other, and look out for certain critical points that are going on.
Yeah, no, great stuff, Jason. The other thing I really wanted to talk to you about, and I'm actually quite interested from about your experience here. I have seen athletes come to the end of their careers, some very early, as you mentioned. Not everybody gets there. Some guys after storied, historic careers. And regardless where that breaking point is, it is a tough, tough time for most athletes to transition out of sport, regardless of how much success they've had. Um, your exit strategy, though, Jason, like, I mean, listen, boy, how many players, especially during that era, were thinking about exit strategies, but going into business and then going on to have an incredibly successful IT company? That's a huge part of preparing our young people for sport today if they do go down that high performance pathway. But most importantly, also, the rink to the boardroom, the stuff that you learned in sport transitioned into the success of that company. Just, man, that is just a great, great story, Jason.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, Jeff. And I think that was the key, right? Is that I understood. I'll be honest. My last game playing, my lips were glued to the ice, and it was a concussion, right? And that's what killed my career. Was I ended up having 6 concussions playing hockey, and but I had realized, like, hey, it's not, at the end of the day, there's other things out there. There's other things that I could be good at. There's other things I could apply my talents to. And really, when I talk about team, and I talk about winning, and I talk about all the competitive aspect, is that if you take those skill sets and you bring them into whatever you're doing, but in the business world specifically, it's no different than a championship team and how it operates and how it functions in the room. And when you look at that, and I treated, or we treated, and I especially treated all, we didn't call them employees, we called them partners, and we treated them all the same way as you would on a winning team, right? And that was, with our ability of having people stay so long. And I think when I look at kids now, is you should have a plan, right? And your goal is always to make it. And as a parent, your goal is for your kid to make it. But even if it doesn't happen, there's other things that can happen that make you in a way better spot than where you would have been, whether you made it or not, right? And even the guys that make it, and I know a lot of guys, and I played with a lot of guys, and a lot of guys, to be honest, I've hired a few of the guys, right, that have played, and it's not because they can't do anything or they don't have something else. It's just you need to have a purpose, right? And you need to wake up in the morning and have something to drive towards, right? And I was very goal driven, and it was drilled into me from a young age, and I do respect that, and it taught me a lot. And when you come out and try to transition, whether you're pro or you're junior or you college, whatever it is, there are great opportunities. And I love working with people, and I love mentoring people, and I love seeing people succeed, right? And there's nothing more gratifying than bringing someone on and seeing them flourish right before your eyes. It's such an accomplishment for them, and you're so proud. So I think, again, is looking at it from a different perspective, is that, have a plan. And I'm not saying it's not a fall back plan, it's a fall forward plan. And when that fall forward plan is, hey, instead of getting 100 points, I'm going to make X dollars, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, or I'm going to run a marathon, whatever it is. There's always different opportunities out there.
Yeah, we're talking with Jason Campeau, the CEO of Elite Athlete Services. Check them out at eliteathleteservices.com. Jason, your exit, not planned, and the concussion story. Oh man. Probably all too common in the combative contact sports for sure. Let's talk about that time for you. And again, one of the things that I love about the Elite Athlete Services, and we're going to talk more about how it works, but just like you said, man, the stigma behind, talking to somebody, maybe, that personal connection, but being able to go in and just independently get some direction is important. And then if you do need help, you guys have the experts there. Let's talk about those concussions and the end of your career. It's kind of a forced end to your career. I know you still wanted to play. And that's where I believe you eventually connected with Dr. Marty Mrazek. That was a tough time, yes?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I ended hockey, I couldn't go in, I couldn't drive, I couldn't go to a mall, I couldn't go in public really, and I was wearing a toque everywhere I went, and for Americans, that's a hat. But yeah, it was something that it just really shook me, and you got a better understanding of what that word means. And again, it's something that, when I look at concussion, it's not something that, you're wearing a cast or something that you have a visual sign of what you're dealing with. So it becomes a struggle, right? And, I overcame that one eventually. I was young, and that's when I decided to start in the business world. And I'm super, super grateful to have kept my health at that point. But fast forward past during last stage of my business, venture was I started running sled dogs, and it was something from a young age. I always dreamed of running the Iditarod, a race up in Alaska, 1,000-mile race. And I always had a husky growing up, at least one, and it was a true passion of mine. And I said, when I have the opportunity and I hit some goals and targets, I'm going to start this. And yeah, we started it, and went full throttle like everything else. And within a few years, I was the first Canadian, first male to ever run. There's 2,000-mile races. There's the Iditarod and the Yukon Quest at the time, and I ran both as a rookie in 1 year. That that winter, Jeff, I didn't know where the hell I was at half. I didn't know if I was in Alaska, Canada, where I was. But I spent most of the winter behind a dog sled. And it was the same philosophy, learning from sport, right? And learning from hockey, and learning as a young kid is in this case, I was coach, GM, the caregiver. I did everything. And obviously I had my wife involved, and my kids helped out, and we had handlers along the way. But it was something that, it was that teamwork, right? And now the athletes are the dogs. They're the superstars. I mean, I had some Connor McDavids on my team as far as dogs. I mean, Spiders, Lenos, all these superstar dogs that taught me more than anything I've ever learned in life was, these dogs were driven and determined, and just the ability they had is incredible. But I mean, it was something that I loved, and ended up running 5 Iditarods, and I think it was 2 or 3 Yukon Quests, and just, it was goal driven, but it was also the camaraderie with my dogs, and again, that team aspect, and going out and trying to achieve something together was incredible. So that I loved. But unfortunately, on the Yukon Quest, there's a summit called there's a huge summit that we were going up the summit, and it was icy, and I'm talking like a true mountain here, and it was icy, taking us a long time to get to a certain point, and we ran into another musher that was ahead of us, and his team had kind of turned around on him, and we're coming back down the mountain. He was dragging sideways, his sled upside down, and basically stuff flying everywhere. And I tried to reach over and grab him, and instinctively, in doing that, I've wiped out on the ice, and I guess I hit my head pretty hard, and I didn't really realize it at the time. And then the other guy that went down the mountain ended up coming back up, and that was just when I was coming to. So I was out for quite a while. And amazingly, Jeff, my lead dog, Spider, I talked about earlier, had my team still lined up straight up the mountain. They were staring at me, all 16 dogs staring at me. And as soon as I got up and said go, they just took off. And for anyone that knows the sport, that team would have bailed out down the hill, but that dog held them out, and really, gave me that opportunity to go on. But as we went on that race, I went about another 200 miles and got close to the border of Alaska and Yukon, and we were headed in. It was a 200-mile stretch where we had no human activity, and we were going into Dawson City. Well, my body started to shut down on me, and really it became.
Is that because of the fall, or was it the elements? Was it hypothermia or combination?
No, it was the concussion, and you got to remember, you're only sleeping 1 hour in 24-hour period, so you're sleep deprived as well. But I had thought, because I didn't know I had a concussion, right? At that point, I didn't know that that's what happened until after everyone explained kind of what went on. But so I kept going, not knowing, and you're tired, right? And you're cold, and all this stuff is going on. So that's normal. That's normal to be feeling those feelings. But I had stopped in a remote area, and then we just sleep on the snow with the dogs and the straw, and I'd fed them, taken care of them. I was walking back and forth down the trail and just fell over a few times and couldn't keep functioning properly. So we have what you call the GPS, like an SOS
Mm-hmm.
system, the inReach. So you can hit SOS, which is like you're in dire need, or you can hit help. And I never wanted to hit that button. It was a goal of mine. Like, I'm not hitting this button. Oh yeah, tough hockey player, or whatever. But I
Right.
knew I was in trouble, and if I was in trouble, then my dogs would have been in trouble, right? And if I wasn't there to look out for them, whatever happened to me, but they would have been in real trouble. So I hit the help button, and not knowing how bad it really was. And I guess in hitting that button, they couldn't get to me right away, but eventually they had flagged down a trapper. They got a hold of a trapper that had a cabin way out there, and they came. Him and his son came and got me on a snowmobile and kind of rescued me and the dogs. But I was out cold, and I'd been out cold for a while and hypothermic, and they brought me to the cabin and kind of really brought me back to life to a certain extent, because that was it. Any longer, and I wouldn't have made it. So it was pretty scary. It was pretty eye opening, on what matters. And the coolest thing that I'm so grateful for these people is they got my dogs back safely and had them all bedded in the straw in their little shack. And when I came to, there must have been a bunch of different people in the cabin at this point, and they sent from Fairbanks, they sent a Black Hawk U.S. helicopter, Black Hawk, uh, to rescue me. The first night they couldn't get in because it was so bad, the weather. Like, when I was out, it was -50, minus pushing into the -60s at that point.
Wow.
So they got to me finally the second day, and then they flew me out to Fairbanks. And that the reason I bring that story up is that that's how it all started for me with Marty. And this is why this company exists in my mind today, where I'm like, absolutely, this is not acceptable the way this operates in society. Was I was someone that, had the means and was able to, try to find help. And I'm sitting here, an ex-CEO of a company, and someone that was fairly successful, and I couldn't understand where to go to get help. This concussion was so bad. I was out, I was in my bed, I couldn't move. It was just paralyzing, right? And all the symptoms, everything that went with a concussion were there. And it's something that I don't wish on anyone. But I'm sitting there eventually, and I'm trying to look on Google on where do I go? Where do I go? What do I do? I can't live this way. I can't live this way. So and your family's sitting there and they're looking at you like you're useless, you're dead weight, like what, and they don't understand it, right? They can't see it. So people don't get it, right? And that's the thing that needs to change, and that's the thing that we're evolving towards, and we want to educate towards. But I used Google, and then finally found Marty and Duran Nadu, who's the Oilers doctor. And that's how I got in with them. And Marty and I had a couple conversations, and then eventually we did some work together as far as getting me one step closer, one step forward, and came to a full recovery eventually. But that full recovery took almost 2 years. And you know, Marty and I said at that point, I can see us working together sometime in the future. And we just kind of said it casually, and here we are today. But again, it was some really scary things. But I am proud to say that I went back and finished another Iditarod after that. Um, Probably not the brightest thing, but my competitive side needed to do it. So yeah, it was something that very scary. But again, how do you eventually come out of it? And now I take it as a learning opportunity, right? And something that I've learned from, I understand. And when people are struggling, whether it's concussion or mental health, I get it, right? I 100% get it. And the thing is, Jeff, is that when I talk to people, you know, everybody has something, right? Everyone, I don't care how good or how perfect you are, there's always something that potentially is there that you can work on, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's something that, you know, when we look at it, when I look at it today, is that, you know, I was watching the World Series, right? And
Yeah.
you see Aaron Judge, one of the best hitting averages, one of the best performances in a year of any baseball player ever, and he hasn't had a hit, or he has a hit, and what's that difference, right? What's the differentiator between him, you know, and Freeman that hits a grand slam walk off, right? Like it's that mindset, it's that mental aspect of the game, and it's so huge. You can have the most talent in the world, but if you're not able to put those pieces together upstairs, you know, it's a real tough challenge.
Oh, wow. What a story. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to go back and listen to this one again. And I'm going to encourage everybody to go back and listen to that again. First off, the Iditarod. That is no small feat. Forget about it. Like, that's no small feat. I can't imagine preparing. But Jason, one thing that really caught me there in that discussion was, you're talking about we, and how we got together and it was us. You're talking about your dogs, you're talking about your team, and this is unconditional love. We don't
Yeah.
know what drives them to go across the Arctic, probably to help you succeed, maybe, I don't know. But when you talk about that team aspect, you and your dogs, man, oh, that gives me goosebumps, I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, it's an incredible bond, and it's you can put that dog on a trail. If he's been on the Iditarod, you could basically put that dog on the next trail, that same trail 4 years later, and he'll know every turn. I mean, they're just brilliant, right? And
Incredible.
I've never in my life, like, and I don't give a shit who the, sorry for that, but whoever
Not
the athlete is, these athletes, the drive, the passion, and they love it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what they wake up in the morning and they're like, give me that harness, let's go. Right. And they love every minute of it. And to watch that and be behind a sled of competitive Iditarod team, not there's no better feeling. And I will say one thing on the Iditarod is you said, and for any musher that's done it, or done any type of racing, it was way harder for me to finish an Iditarod than go through the gauntlet of, you know, 7 game series in hockey. And, you know, it's just a mental grind, right? Think of 1 hour of sleep deprivation. Like, again, the whole mental aspect comes out of it, right? No matter what we do, that aspect keeps coming back, right? And just trying to keep yourself together for, you know, it took me 9 days, 9+ days uh to finish, but for those 9 days, you know, you're beating yourself up, right? And but the dogs are thriving, you know,
Yeah,
that's
I
the
love
beautiful.
it.
Yeah.
Hey, you said one part in that conversation that you learned probably more from those dogs than from anybody else you've ever been around. That to me is a powerful statement, Jason. Wow, man.
Yeah, and I don't mean it to disrespect.
No, of course not. No,
Obviously,
of course
some great people, and that I love and care for, and have taught me so much. But, you know, when I say that about the dogs, is, and I'll talk about one specifically, is his name is Spider, and he just, you know, when a dog saves your life, uh, it's incredible, right? And that's the thing that's gone on that was so exciting. You know, that was not just when that accident happened, but multiple times where, you know, you're in a whiteout blizzard and it's -50, that you can't see a thing, and you're going for, you know, you're going on an 8 hour run on the coast of the Bering Sea, you know, and you don't say one word, and that dog gets you to the point that you're trying to get to, you know, pretty incredible. And you know, any other person is not going through that. No one wants to go through that, and these dogs just love it, right? So they love the challenge. The harder it gets, seems the more they thrive. Um, but yeah, it's, you know, and some of these dogs you raise from when they're young, and it's just something that, like I said, is, you know, they're incredible. They give you everything, you know, and ask for nothing. And
Right.
that's what's really cool about it, is that, we treat our dogs like gold. And I think we have one of the best programs when it comes to canine athletes. But again, it's, treating it the same way as you would a business, a hockey team, anything that we've been involved with. It's all in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said there. You're out in the tundra, -60 in the Arctic, and your first thought upon rescue is, "How are my dogs? How is my team?" Right? I think that says it all, Jason. Well, let's talk about this now. Okay, and I like the man. What a story to connect with Dr. Duran and Dr. Mrazek. Unbelievable, two unbelievable people, by the way,
Yeah.
who are part of the team at Elite Athlete Services. Um, Going back, let's talk about this. This platform you guys have. I love the idea, Jason, what you said earlier about, I can go in if I'm not sure, or there's still maybe some stigma attached to this whole mental side of performance and being a human. And maybe that's because of lack of understanding. But you can go into the program and get some really good direction as to where you're at, what you're dealing with. And then if you do want to reach out, you can. We think about we think about where we're at and the advances we've made in terms of mental performance. There's mental performance in sport, there is the life side, but there's also the health and wellness as well, right?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that part is key, right? Is the stigma. There is still stigma. Like, let's call it out. I mean, it is what it is. And is it, it's not always the coolest thing to say, hey, I'm depressed, or I'm anxious, or I'm dealing with this. But what we like, and what we created is, remember I said when I got injured, is, where do you go? What do you do, right? And that's the, the backbone of the company is, where do you go? Well, we're providing a solution to where you go, right? And what does it mean? What am I dealing with? Why is this happening? Right? Why am I messed up? Is this a bad thing? And the reality is there's a solution to every problem, and it's just getting ahead of it in some cases. Sometimes it's dealing with it, and there's other times where it's just creating that, continuing that healthy brain, and continuing to work on it, right? In every situation, someone's going to go through something that causes potentially some issues. And I think when we look at it, is being able to go through it with 100% confidence or confidentiality, and not having to worry about anybody finding out. So you can actually go through it, answer truthfully, and truly see where you score at the end of the assessment, and then take that and go to the portal that it would guide you to the videos that might help you, right? So that information is right at your hands, right at your fingertips. It's all in one area. And you're not like me, 5 years ago, trying to search Google search engine to find out where the hell do I go. So I love that. But then on top of that, is from a clinical perspective, we have, like we talked about, some of the best doctors available. And that really gives you that opportunity to go to someone that understands what potentially that athlete is going through, right? You're not going to someone that, deals with, everyday citizens. It's somebody that is geared towards what what you're dialed into and what you're going through. So I think all those put together, and then with a lot of the other things that we're doing, really, it stems from, what's needed. It's not something, when you look at a business and you look at a business venture and an idea, is what's needed out there. And for a guy that's suffered a lot of these things, or has gone through a lot of these things, it just makes absolute sense. And I would say this is that, talking to any CEO of any organization, whether it's sports or not, is that if you're a CEO or you're a leader and you're someone that's responsible for other people, giving them the tools today to better and help, and give them the ability to be their best self, is absolutely huge. So why wouldn't you do it, right?
It seems
And
like almost maybe even a responsibility, right? Like like
well,
if they're going to commit to you, commit to them. And that's where it goes back to the individual, the team, organization, Jason. I love that.
yeah, and you're right. Is as a leader is that you want to be, the best leader you can be. And I always look at, hey, what are the best tools you can give people that are available? This is a tool, and what I like about it is in sports, especially, is that now this 13-year-old kid is given the tools to understand what this means at 13. So when I was 15 and I was in junior lining up against McCarthy, I would have known what a couple of those things meant that I was going through. Why am I so anxious? Why am I so right? And how do I, some of the things that we have available are workbooks and worksheets and all the stuff that you can go through to work on it. And I just, again, I wish that was available, but that kid that's 13, whether he ever plays one game of WHL or NHL or any sport, he now has the tools for the rest of his life. So whoever decided to implement that solution, it doesn't just have to be ours. There's other tools out there. Whoever made that decision just enabled this kid for the rest of his life to understand what that meant, right? And to me, again, as leaders, as people that are supposed to make a difference in the world, it's our jobs to do so, right? And when there's things available, you need to take that impact and invest in your people. It's
This might
all
be a great example of just that old acronym, knowledge is power, that old saying, knowledge is power, just understanding and also knowing you're not alone. I can kind of just imagine you. I kind of visualize you, Jason, coming off the Iditarod and that concussion and being almost debilitated, right? Not being able to function as you wanted to function, but not knowing, one, if there's any help, two, where you could possibly even look if there is help. What a conundrum to be in. And again, in terms of understanding the dark side of depression and anxiety, I went through it. Chronic pain. This is beyond sport. With my back, Jason, I had that chronic pain story that you know about, and man, I slipped into the dark side, and I'm not a dark side person, man. Dr. Mrazek was a huge part of my understanding of that side because I've never been there before.
no, and you're right, is you went through it and you understand it. And again, though, but if you tried to, if someone saw you or tried to understand it, again, it's very difficult, right? And I think what we all need to understand is that it's okay, right? And it's okay not to be okay, and that's fine. And if I'm looking at it as a prospect, parents don't want anything bad said about their kid, right? They don't want their kid to look like, oh, he's weak or he's this or he's that. Well, bullshit. Like, you need to understand it. You need to go through it. And I, again, is if you help one kid and you help one athlete, and I think it's absolutely critical, and if you're able to prevent, God forbid, like we had I had ownership into a player agency at one point, and Rick Rippon was one of our players that ended up taking his own life.
Right?
And yeah,
Gosh.
so yeah, and it's just it's a matter of how do we look at this, how do we prevent it, how do we get ahead of it, and again, it's having those tools, and then people can make educated decisions on how they move forward.
Yep.
So you can't always fix everything, but as leaders and people that are moving forward, at least we can provide them with the tools.
I love it, Jason. Listen, oh man, I'm so glad we finally were able to do this. This is a huge get for me on the show and for our audience, and hopefully for everybody they share this interview with. I'll just end with this. You said it, and this will be in the show notes. It's okay to not be okay. That's a big statement, Jason, coming from you. And there is help. EliteAthleteServices.com. And again, you guys go beyond sport, man. Team, organizational, individual help. Hey, listen, incredible story, incredible perseverance, stick to itness, survival stories. There's everything involved here. But at the end, here we are with just a groundbreaking development that's going to help potentially hundreds of thousands, millions of people. I want to thank you and your entire team for everything you're doing there. And I can't wait to see how you guys bring this to the world, man.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Jeff. And I think what you're doing is incredible as well. And obviously always like working with you. And this has been a great opportunity. And I'll end with, kind of my statement is really, there's always a solution, right? And there's always a way forward. And if we can help you or anyone can help you, don't be afraid to ask. And I think it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to own and move forward with. And yeah, super pumped to have this opportunity, Jeff, and keep up your great work on your end. I love what you're doing as well.
Great. Thanks, Jason. All right, there you go. Listen, were you able to put yourself in the leading role here? I mean, come on, minus 55 in a blizzard in the Arctic, totally disorientated from a concussion, saved by your team of dogs and some very special people with an Apache helicopter. Come on, you can't dream this stuff up. What an incredible story. But what's really incredible is how a life of experiences, the good, the bad, the terrible, are all now being knit together and put to use to help drive a collaboration with some incredible people. People like Dr. Martin Mrazek, neuropsychologist, who's been on the show a number of times. And Jason also mentioned Dr. Duran Naidoo, lead doctor for the Edmonton Oilers, who's also been on the show. He also mentions his executive team, Cody Cuthill, who is the COO of Elite Athlete Services. And what's interesting, as you played the role of that young teenager, Jason, who had to fight 6'4", 230-pound Sandy McCarthy on the very first shift of your very first game. As a young teenager trying to deal with everything that was going on back then, we all wish this program was available for you as that young kid. The Elite Athlete Services program is a culmination of years and years of collective knowledge. It's about mental performance for athletes. It's about mental health and understanding what that's all about. It's about helping people to be the very best they can be. Because remember, no one does it alone. And as a leader, as a coach, parent, teacher, manager, or boss, guiding people to the right help at the right time is not just part of the process, it's part of the responsibility when you're creating coachable players. I'm Jeff Gershell. I want to thank Jason Campeau, CEO of Elite Athlete Services, for joining us today. You can check out their great information at eliteathleteservices.com. And I'd like to thank you for taking part in today's show. This is how we get better. And there's much, much more to come. Talk to you next week right here on Crush Performance.
Goodbye now. Don't forget to ride.